From around the world and from CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. It seems clear tonight that martial law in Poland generally is having the intended effect. But the military rulers are continuing to have difficulties. Warsaw Radio says worker sickness and absenteeism is crippling industrial production. It admits the atmosphere in factories is rife with suspicion. Quote, that workers once full of talk now work in silence. And CBS News correspondents in Warsaw, Bert Quint and Doug Sefton, reported today that thousands of what are called civilian volunteers are now being used to reinforce Polish troops. Warsaw Radio says troops did succeed today in ending, without violence, a steel mill takeover in Katowice province. Resistance is said to remain stubborn, however, in coastal Gdansk, where solidarity first took root. The following report from Alan Pizzi includes exclusive photographs obtained by CBS News, which give a hint of the violence that's occurred.
The pictures were purportedly taken on December 16th near the Gdansk shipyard, birthplace of the Solidarity Trade Union. These are among the first to show riot-equipped police confronting protesting workers. A letter, believed to have been smuggled out of Poland and mailed in Sweden, lends credibility to the photos. The writer, named as Pavel Bozika, says the crowds gathered outside the Lenin shipyard to commemorate the 1970 riots there. The writer says the crowd was met by militia and tanks. After several hours, the militia attacked. He wrote, quote, tanks slowly but decisively drive into the crowd, shooting with special chemicals. From armored cars, soldiers threw smoke candles and gases that paralyzed the nervous system. A Swedish priest who just arrived from Gdansk was interviewed by a Stockholm newspaper. He corroborated the Polish writer's accounts, which put the casualties at up to 500 injured and at least 4 dead. The priest also claimed 3 police died. The lament of the Polish writer has a piercing edge. Quote, this nation is dying with a method not invented by any war machine and civilization, unquote. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Stockholm.
One facet of the martial law in Poland is strict censorship of news reports filed through official channels. What you're seeing is the script Doug Sefton had to submit to the Warsaw censor. The marks of the censor's pencil can be clearly seen. Here then is Sefton's report, or what's left of it.
The philosophical question of whether the glass is half empty or half full arises each time there is a news conference conducted by a spokesman for the Military Council for National Salvation. Jerzy Urban, speaking for the government, points out that the process of normalization is continuing since institution of martial law. To support this view, Polish television shows scenes of Katowice. But there are terrorists at work, Urban says, and they are forcing nearly 3,000 workers at 2 mines there to remain below ground. At this point, no negotiations are being conducted, but it's not likely the militia will risk another confrontation like the one which caused the killing of 7 miners last week. Those 7 are the only fatalities since martial law. The positive image of the Military Council is carried on Polish television. A colonel inspects a sugar factory and learns the facts of Polish economic life. The sugar beets are poor quality and frozen. There are no spare parts for the machinery. Bags to distribute the sugar are in short supply. A middle-aged woman is arrested for black marketeering, an example of how widespread is the practice. Her apartment full of material which she bought when available, to sell at a higher price when it is hard to obtain. The authorities here have attacked the Western press for disseminating what they regard as unverified information. From now on, all reports, including this one, will be subject to official censorship. Doug Sefton, CBS News, Warsaw.
President Reagan is getting ready tonight to deliver a Christmas message to this nation, but as White House correspondent Leslie Stahl reports, it is also expected to contain a message of warning to Moscow and Poland's military dictatorship.
President Reagan will begin a campaign tonight of gradually building up pressure on both the Soviet Union and the Polish government to ease up on the military crackdown. he is not expected to announce any bold new trade or credit sanctions. However, sources say he will announce some economic measures against Poland, and he'll say that unless restraint is shown, the U.S. will eventually impose a trade and credit embargo against both Poland and the Soviet Union. Officials said that during today's National Security Council meeting, the third in 3 days, decisions on what measures to take against both countries were made. However, one official said the plan devised was to hold in abeyance those actions in order to give both the governments in Moscow and Warsaw incentives to cease the repression. On the list of possible measures the U.S. could take, on Poland, suspending further extension of credit, Poland's debt is already more than $26 billion. On the Soviet Union, 1, suspending sales of equipment for the natural gas pipeline from Siberia to Western Europe. 2, suspending the sales of all technology. And 3 is a final trade option, a total embargo, including grain. In his speech tonight, the president will say that the Polish people have been betrayed by their own government, which has, quote, waged war against its own people. If the outrages do not cease, he will say, the U.S. cannot and will not conduct business as usual. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
CBS News will carry President Reagan's speech live tonight at 9 Eastern Time.
There are times when life seems oh so cold, but there's always time to warm your heart. A silhouette time, travel on words of love. It's your own special time, so sit back and relax with Silhouette Romance.
Each month there are 6 new Silhouette romances, and now for teenagers, new first love from Silhouette.
Silhouette Romance.
Home fires can get a good start before smoke reaches the smoke detector upstairs. Fire prevention experts agree one just isn't enough. First Alert, America's leading producer of smoke detectors, recommends this plan. 1 smoke detector on the basement ceiling, another on the main floor, and a third upstairs. Your escape route should have the First Alert with escape light. The First Alert plan. The earlier the warning, the more time to escape.
Now there's a new traveling First Alert, too.
A federal judge in Boise, Idaho today delivered a technical knockout to the Equal Rights Amendment. But as Eric Engberg reports from Washington, supporters of the amendment quickly turned out to praise ERA and try to keep it alive on appeal. Opponents turned out to give it a quick burial.
Judge Marion Collister ruled Congress violated the Constitution when it gave ERA backers 3 years beyond the original deadline until June of next year to win approval by states. He also held that any state legislature which once approved the amendment can reverse itself, as has happened in 5 states. Supporters of ERA, who had challenged Collister's impartiality on the grounds he's an official of the Mormon Church, which opposes the amendment, say they will appeal immediately to the Supreme Court.
What has really happened here today is that an obscure judge of a lower court has issued a decision. In no way is this the final decision.
The court has usurped the power of Congress in contravention of all law on the subject. It is a direct confrontation with Congress over which branch of government has the ultimate decision-making power in this area.
Opponents of the amendment, which has not won in any state in 4 years, say the court's ruling will seal its fate.
We don't know what the Supreme Court will hold. We think all the arguments are against this very unfair time extension that was given to ERA. But regardless of what the court holds, no other state will ratify ERA.
ERA forces, while fighting in court to overturn today's ruling, will press for passage of the amendment in 6 states. They need 3 to win ratification, even if the ruling is reversed. They concede the judge in Idaho has made that task harder.
The campaign for equal rights between men and women has undeniably suffered a blow. Legislators who are opposed to ERA will seize upon this decision as grounds for inaction.
ERA is dead if the higher courts affirm today's decision. If the ruling is reversed, then backers of ERA still have 6 more months to fight. And they do not rule out the possibility that they will go to Congress for another time extension on the grounds that today's decision harmed their cause unfairly. Eric Engberg, CBS News, Washington.
of all the breakfast cereals on the market today. Over 100 of them altogether.
Only a very few are high-nutrition cereals. New Buckwheats is one of them.
And among the high-nutrition cereals, only Buckwheats has a great new touch of honey taste.
Mmm. Nice touch.
So, for high nutrition and great taste, New Buckwheats, the only high-nutrition cereal with a touch of honey taste.
In these hectic holiday times, should the incomparable ability of Schweppefessence to lend quiet elegance to any glass be considered indulgent?
Oh, not if it's your holiday.
Schwepping it up, schwepping it up. Treat yourself to a share of the wealth when you're schwepping it up.
Tonic water, bitter lemon, club soda, and ginger ale.
Schwepping it up.
The big three automakers, reeling from their worst slump in 20 years, announced today they will lay off another 84,000 workers for the first week of January. Chrysler will shut all 4 of its U.S. assembly plants. Ford will close 16 of its 17 plants, and General Motors will have 8 plants idle. The new layoffs will be of varying duration, but during the week starting January 4th, at least, there will be, I should say that there will be more than 300,000 workers idle in the automobile industry alone. New figures issued today emphasize Detroit's plight. Mid-December domestic car sales were down 22.5% from last year, and 1981 production is expected to total 6.25 million cars, the lowest in 20 years. Trouble in the auto industry continues its negative impact on the rest of the American economy. One example is copper mining. In Arizona, some 15,000 copper miners have been laid off for the holidays and longer. Linda Douglas went to an Arizona mining town where the effects are beginning to sink in.
Silverbell, a tiny copper mining community nestled in the hills of the Arizona desert, a town at the end of the road, where this year there is no Christmas. Without warning, 2 weeks ago, the Asaco company announced the mine will be shut down indefinitely. The management blamed plummeting copper prices, decreased demand from its main customer, the auto industry, and high interest rates. Almost everyone, 240 employees, has been laid off. For most, today was the last day of work. They must move out of company-owned houses by February.
Oh, everybody's shocked, yeah. In fact, we're still shocked.
Bob Lester, his wife, and 11 children have lived here for 7 years. This Christmas, they splurged and bought an expensive Christmas tree.
We thought this was going to be the biggest Christmas we ever had. 4 or 5 days later, they hung up notice, and we can't take the tree back.
Like everyone else at the mine, Lester finished out his last days, numbed by the prospect of finding a house and a job. Officials at Asaco declined to comment, but one spokesman indicated the company had no choice but to evict most of the employees and close down the town. Bob Lester's children are trying to live normally, hoping to lift their father's spirits. But Lester himself is angry at what he believes is the unfair economic policy of the Reagan administration.
The only time it hurts is on these small boys like me and everybody else that's working for a living. How many of these big boys do you see laid off? How many of them do you see taking smaller wages? How many of them's on food stamps? How many of them trade their limousines in for a broken down Ford?
Nearly 100 years ago, a newspaper called Silverbell the toughest town in the county. Now there are only tough times and the promise of a new American ghost town. Linda Douglas, CBS News, Silverbell, Arizona.
Before long, President Reagan will come up with a budget for the next fiscal year, a budget that probably will produce for this conservative president the biggest federal deficit in history. Bill Moyers is here this evening with a commentary on this ironic situation. Bill?
The irony in the economic story, Dan, is that this man who rode out of the West a year ago to slay the dragon of government deficits is on the verge of being devoured by the beast. How did it happen?
I have submitted an economic plan that I've worked out.
Begin with Reagan, the candidate. He wanted to do something about government spending. To him, the root of all evil.
We don't have inflation because the people are living too well. We have inflation because the government is living too well.
No sooner had he taken the oath of office than Mr. Reagan fired his first salvo. The future of the republic was at stake.
For decades, We have piled deficit upon deficit, mortgaging our future and our children's future for the temporary convenience of the present. To continue this long trend is to guarantee tremendous social, cultural, political, and economic upheavals.
To stave off such upheavals, Mr. Reagan had a plan. It sounded good. Let's cut government spending. Let's cut the tax rate and give business the incentive to invest in tools and plants for growth. Let's balance the budget.
These policies will make our economy stronger, and the stronger economy will balance the budget, which we're committed to do by 1984.
So the disciples of Reaganomics went to work. First, they cut $35 billion from projected federal spending. That should help balance the budget, right? Well, not really. The cuts slowed the rate of growth in spending, but didn't reverse it. More important, there was that other campaign promise Ronald Reagan had made to refurbish our defense posture. He is increasing military spending by almost as much as he is saving on social services. What one hand takes away, the other gives back. Step number 2, Mr. Reagan's proposal to cut individual and corporate tax rates. Here's the theory of Reaganomics, simply put. The goods and services you and I buy from business become profits which business invests in more goods and services, except that government taxes have been siphoning off those profits and discouraging business growth. Cut the tax rate, said the Reaganites, and business will invest those tax savings in new plants and equipment. Result, more jobs, more production, more sales, more profits. Everybody wins, including Uncle Sam, because there will be more business profits to tax and more revenues for government to spend. Now that would get the economy bustling again, right? Well, not really. They had thrown their hats in the air on Wall Street when Mr. Reagan was elected, but not their Japanese calculators. And the numbers weren't adding up. Something had happened. Listen to E.F. Hutton.
Reaganomics has given the average business manager an increase in cash flow, but to get that increase in cash flow, there have to be revenues, there have to be sales, and unfortunately the economy is sinking into a very severe recession, so all the tax incentives that are part of Reaganomics are not stimulating investment because the markets just aren't growing.
A recession. The economy is sliding into a recession, possibly the worst in 40 years. To fight inflation, the Federal Reserve Bank has kept interest rates high. The price of money has slowed economic growth. Businesses are cutting back. Over 9 million people are already out of work. Now, if consumers aren't spending as expected and businesses aren't expanding as expected, government revenues won't rise as predicted. And Wall Street knows what that means. It means the government will be competing for investment dollars that would otherwise go to private enterprise. Up goes interest rates, down comes growth, and boom goes the deficit. What can the president do? Cut defense spending? Only at the expense of a campaign promise and the revolt of conservative supporters. Cut more services like Social Security? Not likely in an election year. Raise taxes? Only over the bodies of true believing supply-siders to whom higher taxes mean slower economic growth. Print more money? Shades of the New Deal. Borrow the money? More red ink there. Reaganomics meet reality.
Reaganomics, because it combines so many different economic elements, is almost a house of cards. And it looks fine while it's standing. Right now, the administration is arguing which card just doesn't fit in. And the concern, I think, is that they may pull the wrong card and the whole house comes down.
But if those cards collapse and the program doesn't work, what next? Democrats are rubbing their hands with glee, waiting for the fall of Reaganomics. But do they have anything to offer except the return to high taxes and big spending? Those were the policies that helped to create the backlash which elected Ronald Reagan in the first place. The moral of this tale may well be that it isn't the economy that's out of control, it's politics.
You buy the best tasting coffee, but coffee is 95% water. You buy the best tasting tea, but tea is 95% water too. So do something about the taste of your water. Get the Instapure water filter by Teledyne Waterpick. Instapure reduces chlorine, sediment, and some organic contaminants. Instapure can give you better tasting water, and that can be 95% of the battle. The Instapure water filter. If it's from Teledyne Waterpick, you'll feel good about it.
Lloyd Nolan for Super Polygrip. I've used Super Polygrip for 5 years now. I don't need this script.
Cut. But Lloyd...
Listen, it's murder when you get seeds stuck under your dentures like this. Ouch! Now watch Super Polygrip. It helps form a seal between your dentures and gums.
Occlusive seal, Lloyd.
Helps keep food out, dentures in. Simple.
Extra holding formula.
The package says that. Super Polygrip helps keep food out, dentures in.
No special prosecutor is needed to dig any deeper into allegations of wrongdoing against National Security Advisor Richard Allen. That claim today from the Justice Department, which said that Allen did nothing illegal by accepting 3 wristwatches from Japanese associates or by failing to make accurate financial disclosures last winter. But Robert Shackney reports that doesn't necessarily mean that Allen now will return to his White House post.
In their report, Justice Department investigators accepted Allen's claim that errors in his financial disclosures involving sale of his consulting business were inadvertent. And they said there is no basis to conclude that there were any knowing and willful falsifications. With regard to the wristwatches, the investigators concluded that Allen could reasonably have believed they were personal gifts not linked to any official act. On that basis, the Justice Department says the Attorney General ruled that there was no need for a special prosecutor. Allen saw it as complete vindication.
It's very fitting that this matter should end the way it ends, since it was based in the first instance on innuendo and rumor, and I guess it ends with a whimper as innuendo and rumor.
Do you still anticipate returning to your role as the President's National Security Advisor?
Certainly.
Allen, who's now on leave, declined to say whether he'd actually been given assurances that he'd be returning to his White House post. For their part, White House officials were careful not to make any commitments, saying only that the counsel's office was continuing a review into what a spokesman said were some other issues involving White House procedures and regulations. Robert Shackney, CBS News, Washington.
The Justice Department announced tonight that a special prosecutor will be named to investigate allegations that Labor Secretary Raymond Donovan was involved in bribery when he ran a New Jersey construction company. Prime Minister Begin of Israel has survived more than a dozen votes of no confidence in the parliament. Today, he did it again. This time, Begin won a 57-47 vote over his handling of the Golan Heights issue. Opponents argued that Begin had embarrassed Israel by denouncing the United States last weekend. The U.S. earlier had suspended its strategic cooperation agreement with Israel in reaction to the surprise Golan annexation. 2 years to the week after Soviet troops poured into Afghanistan, resistance is stronger than ever. That at least is the assessment of a new U.S. State Department report. Based on a wide variety of sources, the assessment claims Soviet troop strength in Afghanistan now has included 90,000 troops. And it says that Moscow's military efforts there now are supervised by a deputy defense minister. The assessment estimates that Soviet casualties are between 15 and 25,000 dead and wounded. It also claims that resistance fighters control 80% of the country, that only the capital of Kabul is securely in Soviet-backed government control.
Big parties, little parties, those very special parties, they always sparkle with Canada Dry. That very special Canada Dry sparkle. Always light, always crisp, and very, very refreshing. Canada Dry Club Soda, tonic water, and ginger ale. They make your parties sparkle. You sparkle. Make your holidays sparkle with Canada Dry.
Atari would like to thank you for taking us into your homes. We wish you all a happy holiday.
The trip had been planned for months, and even martial law in Poland couldn't stop it. 60 Polish children arrived tonight at Zurich Airport for a brief respite from bread lines and curfews to spend Christmas in a land of chocolate and cuckoo clocks. The trip was arranged by a Polish architect who has lived in Switzerland for 41 years. Christ, too, of course, was a refugee. With those words, Austria's Cardinal Franz Koenig welcomed 75 Polish refugees to his Vienna home today for presents, Christmas cookies, and some words of comfort. And as Steve Young reports from Vienna, There is a train traveling tonight from Austria through Czechoslovakia and on to Poland, hoping to shed a ray of Christmas cheer there.
The special train is carrying vegetables, clothing, grain for bread, and coal, which is in short supply because of strikes by Polish coal miners. A passenger train can make the run in about 12 hours. But this Mercy train will require special handling crossing two tense frontiers. Red Cross officials hope it can reach Warsaw by Christmas Day.
We hope it. That's the only thing we can do, to hope that it will run as quickly as possible, and perhaps with Christmas luck it will be.
Reaction at first was slow to appeals for help, a sharp contrast to the quick generosity Austrians showed the Czechoslovakians and the Hungarians.
At that time, we all still remembered how it was when we were occupied by the Russians and when we were refugees. Now we forgot about it. And the people got wealthy, and wealthy people are never very generous.
Another reason the Austrians showed ambivalence is that the country already has taken in 50,000 Polish refugees, more than any other nation, and isn't sure it can handle any additional financial burden. But in the last few days, there has been a groundswell of sympathy.
I had a gentleman who came in and who took off his coat and walked out without a coat because he saw a Polish man without a coat.
Austrians have been coming to collection centers with an outpouring of gifts. Presents have been arriving by mail for distribution. Hotels have been contributing food to Polish refugees who face a Christmas of deep anxiety as they await word from relatives back home. Charitable organizations ask churches to toll their bells for 10 minutes to show that the Austrian people intend to keep their hearts open wide. Steve Young, CBS News, Vienna.
And that's the CBS Evening News for this Wednesday. Dan Rather reporting from New York. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
The criteria for a compact copier of a different sort. It's here, the Canon NP210. A fixed copy board saves space. 21 letter-size copies a minute saves time. Copies up to ledger size. The Canon NP210 even has its own optional mini sorter. The economical Canon NP210. A compact copier of a different sort. Call toll-free for information or contact your authorized Canon dealer.
Isn't that Ciara?
What does it remind you of?
You smell terrific. Ciara, the thoroughly female fragrance. What will it remind you of?
From around the world and from CBS News headquarters in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. Bobby Kennedy. He wasn't always the champion of civil rights Americans thought they knew. Mike Wallace unlocks the door behind the remarkable transformation of Robert Kennedy Christmas night. This is CBS.
Police Major Richard Ordway may soon become the city's first black assistant police chief. We'll have that story next on Eyewitness News.
Oh, don't let them get our ribs. Swamp? What's that? Looks like a message. They want to fix it. You mean the beans and the tater salad? Everything. Ain't no way! I think we're in trouble.
Harley, we may have to make a deal.
When you need a great deal, come to Mr. Getty's for